So we're going to be talking a bit about marketing or muscle, and probably the best place to start is, what is protein actually doing? So Professor Phillips, I'll come to you to lead us off here. When it comes to protein and what role it plays in recovery and in getting people towards their training goals, what is going on?
Yeah, well, I think we have a short video to help us out with this one, so we'll start with that. So great visual, makes my job maybe a little bit easier. So what you saw there is that when people practice resistance exercise or weightlifting, you get some damage that happens, and protein is sort of giving us the building blocks that we need to restructure and repair that damage. And the idea is that actually you are making your muscle a little bit better than it was before. So you're sort of breaking it down during the training, and then you're building it back up. When we build it back up, and if it gets a little better and we're making a little more of it, incrementally you're going to increase in muscle size. So I think, as Yu Liang mentioned, the quality of the protein matters and the absorption of the protein matter. And so we're going to probably come back to a lot of those concepts, but it's essentially a breaking down and then a building back up, but better than it was before.
So if we talk about some of the specific contexts, Claire, if I come to you, and you're obviously working in with a very elite level sport performance context, an incredibly successful season for you, sadly for me, but for you guys last year. And within that, there's obviously protein is playing a very important role in supporting recovery for the players. Can you maybe talk about the considerations for elite football players at that level, and then maybe how you go about having some of those discussions at a player or team level about making sure they get enough?
Yeah, so I think often with protein, especially around football, it can be associated with, building mass and gains and bodybuilding, and sometimes there can be a bit of a misconception around it. But with football, as we know, there's I suppose, huge recovery requirement, as we're often facing very short turnarounds between games. So often 2 to 3 day turnarounds between 90, 100 minutes of high intensity pitch play, really. And often we're facing like 8 p.m. kickoffs. Away in Europe, for example, coming up, we have, in the space of 7 days, we have 3 away games. One of those games being in Turkey. So we're away on a Saturday, away in Turkey, then playing on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. You're getting home at sometimes you're getting home at 2 a.m. Next game is in 2 days' time. So these players have to recover so quickly. So because we're on the go quite a lot, we need to find really, I suppose, easy, practical ways of getting recovery in on trains, on buses, on planes, after games. And I think another challenge that we face, particularly in team sport, is appetite. So these players often struggle with appetite, struggle with facing into big plates. So I guess our jobs as nutritionists and practitioners are to find solutions that can help these players meet recovery demands, but also meet their protein requirements. So often what we do is we're looking at snacks are a big one, because often in a training day, these players could be training or in rehab or in the physio room or out on pitch or in gym, and then they're in the pool. So a big part of their day is actually busy. So we need to fill the gaps between those meals with snacks. So I like to vary up the different sources of snacks as much as possible to prevent monotony and boredom. So using like juices, shakes, shots, food, whether it be biltong, smoothies, different flavors, different colors. Using a clear whey protein isolate goes down really well actually with lower appetite players, and particularly in hot conditions, because it tends to taste more like a cordial drink. So that can go down really well actually straight after a game, instead of your kind of classic milky based heavy smoothie. Some think they're just having, they know there's protein in it, but it tastes more like a juice versus a heavy, thick smoothie. So like that becomes really important of trying to vary the colors, consistencies, what we have available, and also just targeting the kind of windows of opportunity really. So it is like as they come off a pitch, or even it's, you know, coming off training or onto the bench, you're trying to start that recovery process. And then even, for example, targeting sometimes they're traveling 45 minutes, an hour home from the training ground to where they live. So we're trying to target that with maybe shots or shakes, or yogurt pouches are often really popular. You don't need a spoon. So they're driving, having the yogurt pouch, and you're getting a 25, 30 gram hit. So just trying to be, I suppose, creative, keep it different, keep it fun, keep different flavors coming in, colors, different snacks, different food from all our different sources, and trying to make it as practical as possible.
Fantastic. And that's a really great insight of translating some of what we've discussed into the real world elite performance setting. And maybe to continue on what Clare said, Yu Liang, obviously you've worked with several of the Olympic athletes and across various teams, notably swimming and so on. In situations like that, when there is a competition or there may be travel going on, how do you, in those situations, ensure the athletes understand what they need to do in order to maintain their protein intake?
Actually, it's very hard. It's not easy work for nutritionists working in the team, because normally a team not only 1 to 2 athletes, normally have 13 or 30 or 40 athletes. We cannot calculate everyone's protein intake every day, every meal. It's very hard to do it. So I have a very smart tool. We have a mini program. So when athletes eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, they can take the picture. They can take picture what they are eating and upload to my program. And I can see, what are you eating? What this athlete eats, another athlete, and I will give them feedback to tell them which one you can eat and which one you need to change, which one you need to add more, which one delete maybe. So this method, I think, that during the training days, in our training base, I will use this method to help them to optimize their diet. And during competition, I think it's a little bit difficult, because the restaurants, I cannot get the information from the restaurant immediately. So I usually talk to the restaurant before the competition day, 2 days before or 1 day, and I can know what the meals they provide during the competition days. And I also tell our athletes to upload the picture to me, and also can help them to optimize. Because as a swimmer, for example, their competition, the schedule is individual. Everyone has their individual schedule. I cannot make sure I always stay in the dining hall. Maybe I need to stay in the preparation area, in the swimming pool, to help other athletes. So I think upload the picture is a very good method to help them. And I also prepare some snacks, foods, protein bars, protein shake, or carbohydrate drink, sports drinks in the preparation area. Not only Team China, but also Team US, Team Australia, Team France, many teams all do this. I think it's a common situation nowadays. It's very good for athletes. When athletes meet the anti-doping test, maybe it will very, very late, even in the 11 o'clock in the evening, until to the 11 o'clock in the evening. So they also need to take some food. At that time, I will prepare some protein food for them before we come to the swimming pool. And another one is during the travel. Many swimming competition, not in China, in Europe, for example, in Budapest last year, in Fukuoka is okay, or in Doha, in other countries. We have a long flight, need to, So I also prepare some food, including protein food for them during the flight they can take. Because the meal on the plane maybe not enough for them. So I will prepare this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this are what I do for them every day.
Yes, fantastic. That's a really great insight of the links that you're going to there. So, Dr. Helms, of course, you've worked with quite a lot of strength athletes over a period of time. You yourself are a pro athlete in bodybuilding. And so within that context, of course, we have these guidelines we've talked about. We've talked about, of course, getting that from various different types of food sources. So where does supplementation come in at all on a practical level? When is that something that you might have indicated with potential clients?
Yeah, working with the very niche sports of primarily powerlifting and especially if you're willing to call it a sport, please do. Physique sport. It's not like you have teams. You're not typically in person with the athlete until you're in competition. So most of it is one-on-one coaching. So you can go a lot deeper and you can give them more skill sets and a lot more mentoring, which is great. But you're also dealing with situations where the athletes are very good at consuming high protein diets. So that is not an issue. It's not how do we get their protein up, but it is how do I manage hunger? How do I manage being really, really full if they're in the off season sometimes? And then also how do I deal with their individual dietary needs? So we did talk about protein sources earlier, and we mentioned that when we kind of isolate and drill down, some plant protein sources are incomplete, others are. There's a general idea I would actually argue it's a stigma that they're a lower quality. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that it's not 2001 anymore. We have mycoprotein, we have rice protein and pea protein blends, we have various sources, and there are world champions in natural bodybuilding as well as the IPF who are vegan. And we've actually got good data now. There's a couple of RCTs by Montaigne as well as Havea Lorraine, where when people are consuming 1.6, 1.8, or 2.2, you don't see differences in terms of muscular adaptations or strength adaptations. So that's an option. But it becomes much more challenging when you're energy restricted, when you're trying to consume an intake, like we were talking about, over 2 grams per kilogram per day, driving down other sources. And so for certain athletes, you need to do a lot more mentoring around what does your meal schedule look like? What do your habits look like? How do we modify it? So I think that was just something I wanted to bring up, is that while source is important, it becomes increasingly more important in sports where you're just trying to get them up to an adequate intake. Because if you can't get them to 1.6 and you only have them at 1.2, then having high quality protein matters a lot more. But if you're dealing in a sport where everybody's happy to consume a high enough protein diet, you have a lot more flexibility. And it's more about teaching them how to make that work in various contexts and how to incorporate it into a whole diet that might either increase satiety or potentially decrease it a little bit if they're someone who struggles to put on weight in the off season, which would follow some patterns like Claire talked about.
Right. So with that, you mentioned some of the different types of protein, and we can maybe talk a bit about some of the supplemental sources and the difference between them. So Professor Phillips, if we start with you, can you maybe talk us through, well, when we come to a supplement like a whey protein supplement, how that actually gets made, what is going on?
Yeah, well, it made my job very easy again. We're going to see a great video to start out with, and then I'll explain it. So
Fantastic.
yeah. The video is fantastic. And I mean, I think what it does is it shows us that within milk protein, there are 2 different types of protein. One is whey, the other is casein. And actually only a small amount, about 20% of protein that comes from milk is actually whey protein. So it's a very specific process to isolate the whey protein away from the casein protein. And it's done through a series of ultrafiltrations, as the video shows here, going through multiple filters. That takes out the casein protein. It takes out a lot of other components of milk. Lactose is the sugar, which I know gives some people issues gastrointestinally. So you end up with a very pure and very rapidly absorbed protein that's really high in one of the key amino acids, which is leucine, that you'll hear a little bit more about, I think, as a key amino acid. And it's really the amino acid that sort of starts the process. So whey protein really rises to the top as being one of the highest quality. It's got all of the essential amino acids, so all of the building blocks that we really need to build muscle, but it's really high in the amino acid leucine as well. So as proteins go, it's kind of the gold medal protein, so to speak.
So when it comes to then selecting supplemental protein sources, and I have to ask you, Claire, in your situation, obviously there is major repercussions if someone selects a protein that is, or a particular type of product, let's say, that could cause issues for players around anti-doping, or could be tainted with something, even from a safety profile perspective. Can you maybe talk about the safety around the use of supplements and how you not only do that for your job, but maybe allay some of the fears that some players may be having around taking different types of products?
Yeah. So in elite sport, all athletes are subject to doping testing or drug testing. So that's completely at random. Testers are always coming in, whether it be surprise spot check after training, or the worst is after an 8 p.m. kickoff after losing, and all of a sudden they arrive and it's like these two players are on, and it brings the whole buzz down. But yeah, so as a result, us as a nutrition department at clubs, we need to be super, super careful with what we are administering. So there's a few parts to it, I guess. Nutrition department orders supplements in, so we need to make sure that we're using reputable suppliers, number one. The ordering system is done correct. Once the products or supplements arrive, there's a very rigorous kind of checking of all products that arrive. So first thing is checking the batch numbers, correlate with a batch certificate to show that a third-party testing company has tested these supplements to ensure basically no prohibited or banned substances are present. As per like the WADA legislation, we obviously need to follow, and looking for the Informed Sport logo. So all batch certs are then recorded, kept on file, whether it be paper or online version. And then we need to make sure that all supplements are like securely, stored away so that not everybody has access. We need to kind of control it. I think as well within a club, it's important to have, a more formal, a club policy that kind of provides a framework to all staff, all players, anybody working with the supplements, to kind of give these guidelines on what are these processes, why it's important, make everybody aware with whether it be UK anti-doping, WADA legislation, Informed Sport, so that everybody is aware of the important processes we need to batch check all supplements, but then the players need to be, aware of the strict liability part that goes with it as well. So that comes with then the education piece. So there's obviously the whole stuff in the background that the nutrition department need to check with the supplements, but then it comes down to the player itself is the one who's actually taking it. And as we know, a lot of athletes get bombarded by companies, free products, free supplements, deals, etc. So we need to educate our athletes around, if you do get approached by this, you need to build trust with your athletes to make sure that they're happy to come to you and say, look, what do you think of this? Got approached with this? Is this product safe to take? What do you think about is there actual evidence behind it? Can it be beneficial? And you're building that relationship that ideally, I hope that we can educate our players that they are only taking supplements that we provide at the club. And if they're interested in, learning more about a product or some new kind of adaptogen or whatever it is on the market, that they'll come and ask, what do you think of this? I've got approached by this, or I've read about this. Can I get your advice? Is it something you can source for me? We have a discussion, and if it's something that we feel, okay, maybe there is some benefit here and it might benefit you in particular in your position or your performance, let's give it a go. I'd be much more comfortable with obviously me or my nutrition department, like sourcing that for them, batch checking it, going through the right process, and then administering it to the player. So it's kind of it's a bit of a minefield, but I think it requires a lot of collaboration between departments because we have a lot of staff, and a lot of staff can speak with players, and a lot of people have opinions. And we know that in today's age, there's supplements everywhere. There's new stuff coming out all the time, and people are reading articles or seeing social media posts or whatever it is. It's a constant, conversation. Did you see this? What do you think about this? So it's just trying to keep it under wraps, really. Keep a policy in place that everybody's aware of, both players and staff, and you build that trust with everybody. And then, the education piece, I guess, for everybody is important to make sure we're kind of minimising that risk of anti-doping at all costs.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the education piece, for anyone that you might see on screen, part of that, there's actually a great video you'll probably find somewhere on social media of Clare doing some of this behind-the-scenes stuff with some of the players. I remember there's a few of them on exercise bikes, and you taking the opportunity to do some of the education around this. So it's great for any aspiring sports nutritionist to check that out. With that, we're just up on time, so I'll get people to give us our quick roundup. So again, a 20-second key message you would like to leave our audience with from this particular discussion. We'll start from the end, Professor Phillips, and we'll work our way down.
Yeah, I mean, I think coming back to the quality of the protein, whey protein really wears, like I said, the halo. High essential amino acid content. We're trying to get that up to levels that are going to support optimal adaptation.
Fantastic. Yu Liang.
Okay, if you are working for a professional athletes, you need to pay attention to their individual schedule, their individual situation to help them to optimize their protein intake. And it's totally different with normal people, common people. Yeah.
Fantastic. Dr. Helms?
With a well-educated athlete who is really onto it with their protein, they can be mentored quite well and have a diet that fits their either ethical or religious preferences and still optimize things, even though the individual sources are not necessarily ideal if they're consuming a sufficient amount. But it does require coaching and knowledge on both parties.
Fantastic. And Claire?
I think ensure you are sourcing your supplementation or protein from a reputable supplier, and particularly if you're working with elite athletes or are an elite athlete subject to doping testing, ensure to batch check all of your supplements. Look for the Informed Sport label if it's UK or Ireland or Europe, and minimise anti-doping risk at all costs.